I'm not talking about ministry. We evaluate people by ministry. Wow, what a prophet he was. Ministry is different. Ministry is not the test of a man's spiritual level. In the Old Testament, there was a prophet called Balaam who prophesied about the coming of Jesus Christ. You know that? But he's in hell today. He drifted. He went after money. So ministry proves nothing. It's life that matters. I'm not talking about ministry. None of us can have a ministry like John the Baptist. We can't even have a ministry like each other. But life, I'm talking about a life that we can come to as much a higher life than John the Baptist as Jesus is above Moses, an inner life. John the Baptist could not have an inner life. Externally he was fine. But he was defeated in his inner life. I know that because he was under the old covenant. Nobody could get victory in the old covenant. The sad thing is that many Christians who call themselves New Testament Christians, even pastors and Christian leaders, fall into adultery. What's that? Or run after women who are not their wives. Can you imagine any Old Testament prophet doing that? Moses or John the Baptist? You see what a pathetic level Christianity has come to, that we say, oh, that's okay, he's forgiven, and David committed adultery and became king again. This pastor can come back. I say, rubbish. I don't believe it. I would never allow an elder brother in CFC, if he fell into adultery, ever to come back. He can sit in the back row if he repents. He'll never be an elder again, not in a CFC church. But in other churches, they become pastors again. Just sit around quietly for 6 months and come back. You see, this is an indication of the level of Christianity. It's like the corporation schools. Be thankful if you're hearing about the new covenant. So in this new covenant, which is so much superior to the old, as I said, there are 3 stages, but let me show you one more verse before I proceed. Verse 13. When he says a new covenant, he has made the first obsolete. That's like saying up till 1947, India was under the British rule. And those days it was King George VI who was the ruler of India. I remember those days because I was in Delhi those days before independence. King George VI was my head of government. But a day came when he was no longer my head and finished. Now, I don't want to go back to that. Nobody in India wants to go back to the British rule. It says obsolete. The old covenant is obsolete. Everything written in the old covenant is over. Now it is not a question of plenty of money and plenty of healing and plenty of children. No. Now it is a new covenant. The first is obsolete. That's finished. God's cancelled it. You can't go back to that. That was a law which God's cancelled. Now you don't pay 10% to God like income tax. The tithe, by the way, was income tax. The right word for it is income tax. People call it the tithe. I call it income tax. That means they earned something in terms of grain and cattle. The more you earned, your 10% you had to give to God. You had to give more. Just like in income tax. The more you earn, the more you give. And God was the head of the government, and the government workers were the Levites. And they had to pay income tax to support the government workers. It was an entirely old covenant. But I say in the new covenant, God is not head of government. He's a father. How many of you pay income tax to your father? If you're still thinking of income tax, God is not your father. That's why we never talk about tithing in this church. But that doesn't mean you're not interested in the work of your father. A son or a daughter would be very happy to care for the father's work and business and are responsible. I mean, if you're irresponsible son or daughter, you couldn't care less for. God has got responsible children and irresponsible children, and all of God's work is supported by responsible children. The other irresponsible children just enjoy the benefit of the responsible children taking care of God's ministry. It's like in every home. Supposing a home has got 5 or 6 children, and the father's retired, there's no income there, and they're living together. And all the children are working. 2 or 3 pitch in and put in all their money to run the home. And the other 3 lazy children they earn money, but they won't put in anything. They just enjoy the benefit of it. They are 3 responsible children and 3 irresponsible ones in that home. God has got responsible children and irresponsible children in his home. But a good father doesn't compel anyone. He doesn't want anything. If a son is reluctant to give him anything, his dad says, hey, I don't want anything from you. That's what God says. God loves a cheerful giver. The old covenant attitude of pay your income tax. Otherwise, the income tax authorities will come after you. That's how it was in the old covenant. If you didn't pay your tithe, a curse will come upon you. But it's not like that when God is a father. So these are areas which are all abolished.